smiled with total joy, the same as she always did whenever her big brother gave her his undivided attention. It was enough to make Charlotte ill. She hated the fact that Matthew loved Curtina as much as he did, and what she loathed even more was the brightness she saw in Curtis's eyes as he watched both of his children. He seemed so relieved and so at peace seeing them together, and living as what appeared to be the perfect American family. But what he didn't know was that Charlotte hoped, wished, and prayed every chance she got that Tabitha would be healed. She prayed that, if nothing else, Tabitha would live at least for the next 16 years, so she could raise her own child and keep primary custody of her until she graduated high school. Charlotte wanted this so desperately that she asked God for this very thing every night before going to bed, and then again each morning as soon as she woke up. It was the first thought in her mind, once she opened her eyes and realized her nightmare was reality. But no matter how much she prayed, for some reason God just didn't seem to be hearing her, because instead of Curtina spending less time in their household, her visits had only become more frequent. So much so that she was making Charlotte's life unbearable. This little girl, that Curtis loved with his entire being, was ruining the wonderful life Charlotte had worked so hard to create for herself and Matthew. Curtina was destroying everything, but Charlotte could tell Curtis had no idea how strongly she felt about this. Not to mention, she did feel somewhat guilty, not much, but somewhat guilty, about once having an affair herself and then having a child by her lover. Needless to say, this was the real reason Charlotte couldn't be as verbally outraged as she wanted to be when it came to Curtina, and the reason she had at least tried to love her and forget that she was a product of Curtis's extramarital philandering. But the truth was, she couldn't forget. She didn't want to. And instead, she longed for the opportunity to speak her mind, loudly and forcefully. However, she knew Curtis would quickly remind her of her own sins. He would toss all her past mistakes right back in her face, and she wouldn't have any ground to stand on. Charlotte lifted a cup of the hot cinnamon apple tea she'd made earlier, sipped some of it, and admired the beautiful 12-foot Christmas tree. It was stunningly adorned with velvet bows as well as crystal and gold ornaments. And the woman she'd been hiring to decorate for the last 2 years had completely outdone herself. 1 year ago, the main color scheme had been purple and white, but this year, she'd chosen the traditional red and green, and it was fabulous. Even the wreaths layered across the fireplace mantel and those circling all 3 levels of the staircase couldn't have been more striking, and Charlotte was going to make sure to call Letty before the day was over to thank her. Charlotte looked up when she saw Curtis walking toward her with a tiny little turquoise bag swinging from his hand. "Oh my God," she said, thinking how she'd already opened 5 other very expensive gifts from him. "You got me something else?" "That I did," he said, leaning down and kissing her. Matthew walked over with his little sister in tow. "We both know what that is, don't we, Curtina?" Curtina clapped her hands, acting as though she fully understood that Charlotte was obviously in for a pleasant surprise. "Now I'm almost afraid to open it," Charlotte said. Curtis reached his hand out. "Okay then, I'll just take it back." "No," Charlotte said, quickly pulling out the container, unwrapping the white satin bow, and pulling out the jewelry box. When she opened it, her heart skipped a beat, and all she could do was place her hand over her mouth. What she saw was at minimum a 6-carat diamond, with the center diamond alone being no less than 3 carats. "Wow, Dad, that ring looks even bigger than when we saw it at the store. I mean, talk about bling bling, Mom." They all laughed, and Charlotte stood up and hugged her husband. "I don't believe you did this." "Why not? Because it's not like you don't deserve it. And I just wanted you to know how much I love you and how much I appreciate the way you've supported me and stood by my side, no matter what." "I love you too, baby," she said, as Curtis slipped the monstrous rock on her finger. Then, the two of them held each other and gazed into each other's eyes. This was by far one of the best